We hope we'll keep you captivated and interested in our topic of today, which is around enabling responsible and responsive real estate. How fascinating. I will actually ask each of them to say a few words about who they are and what they do. So maybe, Alex, would you like to start?
Sure. Hi everyone. So Alex Wilson here. I lead the ESG function for Brookfield Real Estate Europe. This is around 50 billion of asset under management, all type of real estate. So we cover office, residential, logistics, retail, student housing, anything that's inside the building, basically, and across all of Europe region. And yes, we work very closely with Schneider. They help us with all of the energy management for all of our portfolio globally. So we collect all of the data. They help us with that. They help us on the advisory side, as well as reporting to GRESB and other internal reporting requirements that we have.
Thanks, Estelle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is James O'Donnell. I'm the London Property Business Co-Lead. I lead that alongside my wonderful colleague, Angela Crowther. We look after the kind of commercial, the residential, hotel sector, but of course the kind of growing overlap with things like life science and technology and data center kind of asset class. Our focus really pivots around sustainable development. And that's key to what Arup does and who we are. We have growing interest in our kind of due diligence services, and that's kind of every aspect of the property life cycle, whether it's pre-acquisition or in design or in construction or in use, of course.
Great. So for those of you that haven't met me before, my name is Estelle. I lead at Schneider Electric what we call the building segments. Essentially, it's one of the 8 global sector teams that the group has set up, and we focus on anything which is linked to commercial buildings, but also the built environment, hence our work also with the likes of Arup. So obviously working very closely with Brookfield, who's one of the leaders in asset management in that space, investing a wide array of assets, but also working hand in hand with Arup on a number of topics, particularly digital and digital architectures for the benefits of commercial real estate. Right, so a little bit about, very briefly, what Schneider does, because very often we get labeled as an electrical equipment manufacturer. I'm sure most of you now hopefully know that Schneider Electric is actually a technology firm. And so the reason why we wanted to get that ecosystem together to talk about responsive and responsible real estate is really to show you that when you marry all 3 sides of the equation, you can get to great outcomes. Technology has to be part of the conversation. When we think about what Schneider Electric has been doing, we've been focusing on the sustainability space for 20 years plus. It's really part of our DNA. And when we look specifically at what we do it not only at least for sustainability on ourselves. We have pretty stringent KPIs, roadmaps, and we embed those into our day-to-day business and how we take business decisions. It's really infused into our business strategy, but it's also delivering those outcomes to our clients. So we hope that we can, walk the talk on ourselves, but also really help our clients decarbonize and optimize the built environment in particular. So if I look at what we do in the building space, we tend to say that we decarbonize and optimize, indeed, the built environment, and that through the help of technology, automation, digital technologies, electric technologies, we're really helping deliver assets that are resilient, hyper-efficient, sustainable, and first and foremost designed for people. Let's not forget that all the buildings we live in are meant to serve the community and serve us, given the amount of time we spend respectively in buildings. I think it's up to 90% of a person's time is actually spent in a building. So the theme of today, indeed, responsive and responsible real estate, is really indeed looking at the responsibility that all of the actors of the ecosystem hold in order to deliver on that value proposition, but also to do it in a very responsive manner. So under responsive for us, what that would refer to is building resilience into those assets, building adaptability, making sure that the assets are there to stay and deliver over time on the promise they've made to their occupiers. Okay? And so the way we thought we would organize this conversation is actually to look at 4 key challenges that the real estate industry is facing, which we've collected from many of our clients' conversation. And we actually had a chat with James and Alex to ask them also whether those 4 challenges resonate. And the answer we got was yes. But if you think they don't, please hold that thought and challenge us towards the end of the panel. And so let me share those with you. So when we look at the 4 trends that we think from everything that we hear from our clients and partners fundamentally impact the real estate industry, they're focused on 4 things. One is we're seeing a market where we are faced with tighter environmental regulations, and we can decide to be proactive about them or pretty much passive about them. The second trend that we see very much is around shifting occupant expectations. And so indeed, whether you're a large corporation or whether you're actually an individual, you expect different things out of the building that you interact with, whether that's your home actually, or whether that's the office you go in sometimes, or whether that's a shopping mall, or whether that's a store, or any actual physical building asset that you get a chance to interact with. The third trend that we've noticed is indeed a change in some of the market conditions. We've called them adverse because they've been pretty drastic, and I'm sure Alex will have a lot to say about this, given the institution that he works at. They've been extremely focused on how they can address those changes, but not only, they have also some pretty strong implications on the business of Arup. And then last but not least, what we're seeing indeed in the real estate market is the role of technology. You know, technology is changing, technology is inviting itself at the table, and that has also quite some implications on how building assets need to be designed, thought of, managed, and operated. It creates challenges all along the way for all of the ecosystem. So without further ado, I suggest we start diving into the first theme, which is around tighter environmental regulation. So if I first turn to Alex, with your ESG hat at Brookfield, do you want to walk us through what that means for you in your day-to-day job and how Brookfield thinks about it?
Yeah, probably I'll ask first a question to everyone here, just to understand the attendance that we have. But who's part of like an LP, landlord, investor side? Okay. So the rest are more consulting and providing other ESG services, I assume, right? Cool. Okay. So the world I'll picture it is how we see it, and probably that helps you understand as well where the value is. But I mean, ESG is something that for Brookfield is obviously in the core of the strategy right now. Obviously, we do have a number of funds that are, we have transition funds outside the real estate world, so I won't delve into that. However, we understand that differentiating yourself on your assets and making sure that your asset is prime real estate needs to address ESG. There are 50 shades of green, as our boss always says, and we're in that trajectory, right? We don't need to be in the darkest green today. We need to be somehow our assets needs to be on the journey to be green. So that means the way we address ESG it goes from the core of the investment strategy. So we start on the due diligence side. Within the first part of the due diligence, we need to understand, okay, what we're going to be doing from an ESG perspective. What are the challenges that we're going to face? Not having ESG, is that an issue, a deal breaker for us? It's not, right? And we have to be clear. Obviously, if real estate is attractive from an investment perspective, we're going to go for it, but we're going to plan for it. So definitely ESG just starts from a very, very beginning, and we do address that through the underwriting model. We do address it through the due diligence process, and we try to forecast, okay, this is how much work we will need to do later on. So on that matter, yes, ESG is at the forefront. The way we look into it is data. So when somebody is thinking already on net zero, you're already too far away. Understand where you are today. So step one is collect as much data as you can, as accurate as possible. Estimations, it's not great because it's very hard to estimate data without having 100 of different data inputs from your buildings, and that you normally don't have. So estimations is already something that you need to strive to reduce as much as possible. And then from there, we then approach, okay, which are the assets that they are worst performing? Those are the ones that will need the bigger tickets, the bigger items from a CapEx perspective. So on that matter, we would then intelligently and try to develop these net zero pathways in the long run, because obviously tomorrow we're not going to be net zero, but we want to be by 2050. We want to reduce 50% of scope 1 and 2 by 2030. So all our plans needs to try to meet those targets, right? Everything is really easy to say. It's harder to put into practice. So obviously having a key advisor helping you on this end, it's important. And then the number 2 is the stewardship across departments and the stewardship across regions. We can't have just one person responsible for this. Finance, investments, portfolio management, everyone is involved in this. And so it's important that everybody understands it and everybody works towards it. So we have to integrate all of our departments into the process, and they are. And we have been doing it, and clearly in the last 3 years have been massive shift on that end. So yeah, I think it's a long answer, but addresses it.
I'd like to move to the second trend, if that's all right with you, on based on what we've observed. And again, going back to that shifting occupant expectation. So maybe if I start with you, James, what does that mean for you when you work on a new design, when you work on a new project? What are some of the things typically that some of your clients would come to you with in terms of ideas or requests, and how does that change or not how you think about the digital piece or some of the technologies you might recommend?
Absolutely. So, and we talked also about that kind of the tenets of a really important digital strategy. The Harvard Business Review does a fantastic piece on the 10 top reads, and I think done one recently a few years ago about on leading transformation, digital transformation. It's a fantastic read, really recommend it. Effectively what it says is don't try and do it all at once. You know, and we can come away from places like this, from MIPIM, go away, AI is going to change the world, so we're going to go, going to roll it out across the whole business. And typically that's where things fail, because the success for a digital strategy and implementing it is change management. And we're all humans, and we are very much set in our ways. So changing is hard. And even if you go and interview people and say, you know, what's hard about your day job, you know, what's difficult about your design as an occupant, what do you not like about your office? Sometimes you know what it is, but you have a conscious bias towards, you know, what you've heard and kind of being a bit of an echo chamber. So for us, digital strategy is really around understanding the specific project, stepping back and saying, okay, well, what does the client want to get out of this project? What does the occupant want to get out of this project, or the tenant? Individually, our teams, what do our teams want to get out of this project? Because it's, you know, we're delivering it, but also, you know, personally, we want to grow and learn new things. And then what are the pain points? You know, when a company or a client or a new project comes to Arup or to any one of us, you know, they come to us because we have experience and we have knowledge. And we know also what those pain points are going to be. We know where we're going to, you know, find it difficult to deliver things, where we're going to use lots of time, where things are going to be not very automated. And collectively, once you've explored those pain points, those team aims and client aims, you can then really focus on delivering a solution. And that Harvard Business Review piece, which talks about, you know, one step at a time, delivering an MVP, a minimum viable product, is so important. So that's why I mentioned earlier about having a digital discipline in our team. When we say, look, our clients come to us and they want to deliver something, maybe from an occupant point of view, it could be some kind of smart enablement piece, maybe it's a new app. You can't afford to kind of say, okay, well, here's a large sum of money, go away for 6 months, come back and show them what it looks like. Things are moving really fast now. You need to see what it looks like in 2 weeks or a week. So come back to me with the bones of the app. Don't worry about it looking perfect and being all shiny. Show me how it's looking. Let's go and test it on the users, because if you're the CEO or CTO or the project manager or the sustainability manager, or you're an occupier or you're a tenant, you're going to want different things from that data. So go and test it on the data, understand what the user journey is, have maybe a user experience, a UI, UX person in your team who can interview someone. I talked about the conscious bias. If you ask somebody what their pain points are, they probably don't know. So go and shadow them. They might be a bit embarrassed to say, actually, I do still do a lot of copying and pasting in my day job, and I've got emails from clients, and I'm saving stuff on my C drive, and I'm moving it into Excel, and I'm editing it with my initials and version 4.6.2, and back on an email and back out again. That's what we need to get away from. But people don't want to be honest about that, and that's fair enough, because we all want to be saying we are using AI and we are using the latest tools at our fingertips. So I think once you've then got clarity on those pain points, you've got clarity on what the user wants, and you've got clarity on the data. A really good example of this is a common taxonomy. So it's so important that our naming convention of our data is consistent. Arup recently, over the last 5 years, we've spent globally trying to align the way we deliver our Revit models, so the kind of data in our buildings, in a consistent way. So we're calling a light fixture, a wall, a chair, as opposed to like one product being calling a light fixture LIGHT_fixture, someone else calling it, abbreviating it as LGT_fixture. If you don't have taxonomy consistency, you're never going to be able to extract useful insight from your data. And so that's going to be really, really important.
Great, thank you. And if I turn back to Alex, on that shifting occupants experience or expectations, what does that mean for you when you think about your asset management, with your asset management hat and development hat?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'm going to say, I think Office has led the way in the UK specifically, but also in other regions we've seen. So tenants are demanding, and that the shift is huge, right? But they are demanding from the E side, they are demanding us certifications, green energy, minimum EPC. We have cases where certain potential tenants are asking for EPC A in their potential space that they want to lease. We've seen as well other smart equipment that they want to have in their space, because they want to manage themselves their energy, so they want to have access to their energy. One good example we have is in an Irish investment. There are smart meters on all the floors, and they gave access to all tenants to an EMS that they have internally, and basically they are competing against each other with a prize at the end of the year. So the one that saves more energy gets a prize. You would say, well, who cares about this? Well, actually, there is a really big competition going on, and results have been really positive. So there's a practice of how tenants are caring about it, and actually they are even competing about it. They don't want to be the last one. So that is driving efficiency within the building. So definitely we do have it. Now, from the S side, it's no less than the E, where we need to have bike racks, we need to have showers, we need to have sports and social facilities within the building. They want to do yoga. They want to do, they want to have like a meditation room. They want to have another room where they can just, have some lights and shiny stuff. They demand this, right? And if you want to be prime rent and you want to continue to charge prime rent within your real estate, you need to have all of this included. There is a cost to it, but it's the only way that you can maintain prime rents. And I think the data, it was CBRE came out, and I feel it's close to 70% of the prime rent in UK, specifically London, have minimum ESG kind of requirements. And so they differentiated themselves. So the data is there. Now, if we think about other industries, we are trying to push that, right? Kind of the way it's led by office, but we want to see that change elsewhere. So on the logistics side, we have a very good example that we're working on, which is a multi-logistics park, completely developed from brownfield. And basically what we did is, given there was a very big space, we developed a multi-energy generation plan. And so we have 90 megawatt of solar panels, 20 megawatt of geothermal, a biomethane plant, and over 500 EV chargers. Now, we made a whole valuation of it, and we are expecting to create over 15 million euros of value there. So there is value onto ESG once again, and the shift, we can see it, fully tenanted. And yeah, I think if anyone is providing this type of services, make sure that you guys value for what's the creation that we're creating, right? The value creation piece of it. So that's what would be my recommendation.
Great, thank you. I think that's a great segue to our third trend, which is actually around adverse market conditions. And indeed, we're faced with probably the last 2-3 years with inflationary cost pressure, rising interest rates. So it's making the investment case in real estate more challenging. So in that context, how do you articulate the value of what you each provide into that built environment? So maybe this time, if I start with Alex, how do you marry that progressive ESG approach with, some of the metrics that you have to abide by from a value creation point of view? So it's a bit of a segue to what you've started touching upon.
Yeah, sure. We're in a bearish market from a real estate perspective. We're not going to discover anything there, but I think in this type of market, ESG is actually a differentiator. I mentioned it briefly before, right? If you have ESG credentials, your real estate is automatically more valuable. Not only that, it's demand, right? If we talk about the word demand, the reduction of energy demand is saving money to any tenant. Mm-hmm. So that's key. What I would say is, from an ESG perspective, we have the easy level and the hard level. The easy level is, let's do small things, not very disruptive, but will bring energy efficiency. That's a no-brainer. Anyone is doing it. Then you have the hard level. And the hard level is, you need big ticket of CapEx, right? You need to spend significant money, significant disruption to tenants in the building. That is the hardest one, right? But that is the one that is going to give you higher certification, let's say, higher efficiency. Now, the ROI on that project is not going to be immediate, and we have to be realistic. So how do you create value through that? Well, there are different ways we're doing it, but one of them is engaging with the tenant directly. So if you try to engage with the tenant to kind of share the cost with them, it's not easy. Many tenants have the same net zero commitments as you have, right? So they will be more than keen on, sharing the cost of it, if it's going to look good on them, if it's going to give them progress in the net zero strategy, and as well as to us. So we had more than one case. We have one case in London, 30 Venture Street, which is a building of ours. We're going through a CapEx project, and the tenant has agreed to partially finance all of the big tickets, which is fully electrified with air source heat pumps. The cost is huge. The ROI is almost zero because the electricity cost is higher to gas. And so, we came with this solution. Overall, that's the way we think we can create value in this type of market.
Great, thank you. And that's actually a great segue to the fourth trend that I thought we could talk about around technology landscape transformation. You've talked actually, at least you've hinted at some themes. You've mentioned AI, which is the key word these days, but perhaps not only. So I would love for you to walk us through what that technology landscape transformation means, and how you embed the theme of adaptability and resilience of technology over time through the strategy of Arup and when you work with clients. What are the things you're seeing from a technology point of view?
There's definitely a lot of interest around smart enablement because we don't know what's going to come in 5 years, like I said, or 10 years. So making sure we're ready for that by enabling our buildings to adapt. AI in buildings, I mentioned about, expecting them to learn and grow. Digital twins, we talked about 10 years ago, but actually after that kind of the hype piece, and everyone's no longer talking about it, they actually are starting to be delivered. We are seeing live metering from buildings. If you're an asset manager, you want to see the live data. Well, now we're seeing it. You've got dashboards where you can look at your portfolio of buildings and actually seeing how they are live performing. So then you can tweak the controls. You can go back in and go, well, actually, I want to change the way the blinds are responding to the sun path. I want to go and change the temperature. I want to see what happens if I increase the temperature or reduce the temperature. If I make changes virtually before actually making them in real time. This is now actually here. So although it's not a buzzword anymore, it's landed. And I think that's the same with AR and VR. Again, 10 years ago we were talking about that. Augmented reality. It was kind of exciting. People walk around in goggles, but now you're seeing it again. Google is still about to release another version of their latest goggles, and hopefully one day we'll convince real estate that we don't need to have a Cat A fit out, speculatively for the entire building, maybe 5%, a couple of floors. In some regions of the world, they're still fully fitting out all of the chilled ceiling or the dry lining, then ripping it back out again and redoing it when a tenant comes on board. Footfall tracking is definitely hot. So people are expecting to see from an occupancy point of view, who's moving around my building, where are they going? Are they in the landlord areas or tenant areas? Are they spending time on the balconies and the roof gardens we've created? Or are they not? Because we need to know that. For example, like cycle parking is huge at the moment. We're putting so much provision in buildings for cycle parking, which is fantastic. But I think we're still not quite there where we're seeing, is it being used? So we're certainly seeing designers saying, well, look, we'll make provision for that cycle parking because we believe in the future, but if it's not being used for cycle parking, what else could it be used for? So making sure we're not designing spaces which only fit small bikes, but are a little bit bigger, to allow for that future change of use. And one benefit of the construction industry is being a bit of a laggard in innovation is we can kind of steal insights from other industries, aviation and media and...
No shame.
Yeah, no shame at all.
No shame.
I like the idea
It's a circularity strategy, reuse. It's...
Absolutely. And I like the idea of going online and someone helping me choose my clothes, or you're going to buy a new car and they go, okay, this person's a family, they've got 2 kids and this is the type of car you want. You can go on and within 10 seconds, you've got the car you want, the price point and the colour. That's going to happen with buildings as well. And I think tenants and I think landlords are going to expect that and want to see that before they make very large commitments on large investments.
If I had to ask you, what is actually the one thing, the one call to action you would want the audience to retain, what would that be? And if I don't know who wants to go first.
I'll jump in. I'll go first. I think it's change management around digital data. So you can have a great data strategy, you can have a great digital vision, but you've also got to bring your people with you. And you've got to spend the time in actually convincing people step by step that it's the right solution rather than just throwing a massive change on them. So I think it's a kind of change management cultural piece.
Yeah, and I think from the message from my side, probably it's more for businesses like ours, like Brookfield, but it's don't wait until regulation tells you to do something. Just go ahead and do it yourself.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us.